Hello and welcome to this refresher series on JMeter. So in this first video, I'm going to ask very basic questions, and if you are able to answer them, then you are better off than 20% of people who work with JMeter or who know about JMeter. So let's dive into this right away. Okay, so here is the first question. So how do you basically start JMeter in a non-GUI or CLI mode, right? Now, this is a very elementary question because you need to run JMeter in non-GUI mode, especially when you're running a load test, a full-blown load test. Okay, so if you're able to answer this, the next step is if you're in a situation where JMeter is running behind a proxy and requires authentication, then how will you do it? So you need to club your other options of non-GUI, starting JMeter in a non-GUI way with this. Okay, so try answering this as well. And then what if you also need to generate a run log file? And on top of that, again, let's say you are running your tests in distributed mode, which would most likely the case will be, especially when you're running on JMeter and you're running a load test with a lot of users, you will use a distributed mode. So how will you run using your different remote servers? And let me give you a hint, there are two ways to do that. Next up is, let's say you also need to generate an HTML dashboard report when you are running your test. So there's again two things here. So one is you want to generate your report right after the test is over, and maybe you want to generate a report not after the test right away, but maybe after some point in time using the report that you have generated during the test. So try to answer both of that. And then let's say you want to set a JMeter property at runtime when you are running your test. So how will you do that? How do you set a Java property instead? And how would you set properties on your remote servers when you're running on distributed mode? Okay, so all of this are all pertaining to non-GUI mode. So if you're running JMeter in CLI or non-GUI mode, then all of these are very elementary questions that you would get, or something that you would be using in your day-to-day life if you're running tests on JMeter. So try answering these. So once you're done with that, there's one more question for this video, and that is, so what best practices to follow while you are running load tests with JMeter? So as a ground rule, pause this video and try answering these questions. Once you're done with that, see you on the other side. So the first question is, how do we start JMeter in non-GUI mode? Very simple. So you need to start your CLI, then go to your JMeter's bin folder and execute the command jmeter-n-t, provide the JMX file, -l, provide the results file, which is a JTL or a CSV file, right? Let's say you're running behind a proxy, you need to add the flags -h, where you provide the proxy's host name, -p, the port number, -u, which is your username, and the -a, which is your password. Now you want to generate a log file, that is -j in small case. Okay, and then your log path to your log file. So something and maybe jmeter.log, okay, or log.txt, something like that. Okay, what if you want to run on remote servers? So it is -R if you want to run on specific servers, right? So let's say you have 5 servers or load generators configured and you want to run on only 3, so you're going to provide -R and the IPs of only those 3 remote servers. Let's say you want to run on all your configured LGs, you will do that with a -r. Generating an HTML dashboard report, like I said, so if it's before, if you want to run your, if you want to generate your HTML dashboard report right after the test, then you're going to use a -e, -o, and then the output folder. If you want to generate an HTML report, maybe sometime later after your JTL file has been, after your test is over and your JTL file is already created, then in that case, you will need to use it like JMeter. Along with the JMeter, you will just use the flag -g in small case and then -o and provide the output folder path where you want to generate the HTML report. Okay, now how do you set a JMeter property? You do that using a capital J. Okay, so let's say you want to pass something at runtime, a JMeter property where your JMeter is running standalone. You're not using a Maven project or anything, but just JMeter standalone. So -j. and your uh, property that you want to set. So maybe anything that you have used in your script. So if you want to set a Java property, let's say your JMeter is running as a Maven project, okay, you have BOM files and all that. So you will use a dash capital D and then your property, right? And if you're running in distributed mode and you're trying to set properties on remote servers, okay, since if you're running standalone JMeter like we saw, it has to be dash J or dash D. But if it is on remote servers and in distributed mode, you have to use a dash capital G. Okay, and then your property names. Otherwise, it will not be cascaded. The values that you set will not be cascaded to your remote servers or your load generators that you have configured. It will only run locally. Cool. So that's that. And so coming to the next question, so what best practices to follow now? Based on my experience, I'm going to tell you a few, and then I'm also going to point you to resources after that, which you can follow for both the questions, right? So as best practices, it's very important that you first and foremost, you run JMeter in non-GUI mode. Never try to run load tests on GUI because it is highly resource intensive, okay? So it's a must that you run on non-GUI mode. That is why I already posted those questions at first. Point number two is make sure you are not using any listeners or keeping your listeners to the minimum, especially when you're generating a JTL file and all that. You don't you're generating a JTL file along with uh, uh, running your test in non-GUI mode. You don't need to have any listeners in the first place. Or just in case you need something, then it has to be kept to the minimum. I would recommend not to use any listeners at all because you will not need one when you're running in non-GUI mode. Okay, because every listeners can be populated with data right after the test is over using the GUI. Okay. Number three, make sure you are allocating enough heap size to your JMeter controllers and your load generators so that they don't run into OOM errors or out of memory errors during a load test, because it rendering the entire test obsolete or running the entire test not usable. Okay, it would be a complete waste of your time. So make sure that is there. So you can do that using the dash XMS and XMX flags. So if you know, those are your JVM flags that you can use to set those values. Then apart from that, also make sure that you're using the minimum number of assertions. Don't use a lot of assertions. It unnecessarily adds an overhead to your requests and while all that processing is happening. Again, then next up is when you're in distributed mode, by default anyway, JMeter strips your responses or your response body when it's sending data back from your load generators and collating that on your controller. I'll share with you a few resources that you can take a look at. Okay, visit this. Okay, so you can see all your CLI modes. So this is basically how to get started with JMeter documentation. You can Google that up and you can get to this. So what all CLI commands that be? So we just discussed all that. So this is one. And second is if you go and check JMeter best practices, you're going to find a lot of different best practices to actually follow. So what I was talking to you, so and that'll again vary based on what all different components you're trying to use. Okay. So, but what I was talking to was this section where reducing resource requirements. So So this is what we all discussed, and there's other things as well. Yeah. So one more thing is you need to use CSV output rather than Excel. So this is these are all what you need to kind of follow when you are running a test. Okay, and then for different components, like I said, so you will have different things to follow when you're doing the ingest scripting. And so you can go through this page, and you will get a lot of different things. I hope that this was helpful, and I'm going to come up with many several videos since this was just the since this was just the first video in this series. I just wanted to keep it simple. I just wanted to have very elementary questions first, okay, just to test the mood and kind of bring you in the groove. So next up, it's going to be a bit more interview-oriented questions that look very interesting, questions that help you build up on your JMeter skills and actually help you assess yourself better. Okay, so thank you for tuning in and see you in the next one again. And I really hope this series uh, helps you uh, gather some good knowledge around JMeter, even if you are an experienced person working on the tool for quite some time. So see you again in the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.